I've got quite a lot of slides, so I'm going to flick through them quite quickly. I think one of the things that we have noticed at Delta DNA, we reminded ourselves we've been going for 7 years just about, which we're quite impressed with. I think games industry is all about perseverance and keeping going and sticking around. And over that 7 years, we've learned a tremendous amount about how to use data and analytics and CRM tools and ad mediation to balance game economies. It's a constant challenge to balance the experience that you're giving the players with making money. And actually, over the last 7 years, I think we've done a good job of figuring out the different dynamics. About a couple of years ago, we realized that we were missing an important leg of this three-legged stool. If you think about engagement and in-app purchase revenues, ad strategies seem to be a little bit sort of thought about less than the other two. And actually we saw some of our clients being quite cautious in terms of their ads, and it felt like it was a necessary evil at that point in time. We've done a survey over the last 3 years to just take a temperature check of the industry, hundreds of responses from publishers and developers, to see what the attitude is to ads as part of the game economy, and there's been some really interesting trends in that. So I'll share with you a bunch of charts, basically, that are interesting findings from the survey that we've done. But in the first instance, let's just talk a bit about the context for advertising in games. As I say, we've been thinking about this for the last 2-3 years, and the reason that we got interested in this was that a lot of our clients did seem cautious in terms of their ad strategies. They were waiting for 10, 12, 20 sessions. They were cutting out the spenders, and then they were being fairly aggressive in terms of advertising, different types of advertising as well. And actually since around about 2015, we've seen a dramatic change in that. I think part of this is because the industry is maturing. I guess the first sort of 2-3 years of our existence, the industry was still figuring out free-to-play. Still trying to figure out what are good free-to-play mechanics that are going to make people stick around and ultimately are going to make money. Analytics went from being bolted on at the end of the development cycle to something that it was at the heart of how you develop games through A/B testing. And I think that ad strategies, ad implementations are moving earlier in that development life cycle as well. And that's giving you an opportunity as developers and publishers to refine your ad strategies, to do A/B testing around ads, to understand what is the right placement, the right density, and the right targeting of ads in the game, and treat it just like you would engagement and in-app purchase. So that's been an interesting and quite a dramatic change, I think, in terms of attitudes to ads. Whereas now, it would be unusual to see a big mobile title without ads in it. And ads that are actually part of the game mechanic. You get rewarded for doing something, for consuming the ads, and really making the ad within the game part of the experience. So that has been pretty dramatic. And as I say, we've moved from seeing our clients on the Delta DNA platform being pretty cautious about ads to actually now starting to refine their approach, using ads as a game mechanic, using analytics to target the right density to different segments. We talk a lot about behavioral segments at Delta DNA. It's quite often useful to think about how novice players will interact with your game compared to expert players. So things like defining a novice player in session 1, and then being able to start your ad strategy early in the game. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that, as long as the implementation of the ads is thoughtful and you're taking this player-first approach. So over time, we've seen clients of ours achieve 60% plus in terms of their income coming from ads, which is phenomenal because it's probably fair to say that the average is 20% on ads. So of all of the things that you can do in terms of improving the game economy, it seems to us through our analysis of economies and player behaviours that improving your ad strategy is going to make your game profitable. And this is of all of the things you could do, the easier lever to pull. It's not easy, because nothing's easy in building video games, but it's easier, and there seems to be a lot more revenue that can be generated from ad strategies. And we'll talk a little bit about how that can be borne fruit. Delta DNA platform is a real-time engine. Data comes out of the game, players are segmented in real time, and then you can deploy CRM. That can be in-game messaging for offers, gifts. It can be push notification to reinforce those communications. But importantly, and this is about managing the whole of the game economy, it's about ad strategies as well. We've got what is called an unbiased ad mediation component to our toolkit called Smart Ads. Unbiased because we're not an ad network. We actually exist to shine a light in terms of ad network performance and to pick the right ad networks for the particular combination of players and locations and devices. But with intelligence and taking this player-first approach by collecting this data, you can then start to think about the player life cycle. So for example, on this chart, the particular player has declined our carefully crafted in-app purchase offers. That's a shame, but we can learn from that. So let's stop making offers for the time being, and let's do a mixture of ad strategy. Doesn't mean that you can't do offers in due course, but the point here is that we're not taking this sort of more clunky approach to ad implementation, cutting out the spenders and waiting till quite late in the game to serve ads. We're now blending ads and in-app purchase, and now we're thinking about different segments of players that we're going to implement these ad strategies in. And the Delta DNA toolkit supports all of that through segmentation tools, ad mediation, and CRM tools as well. So the 4 components we see are important to delivering strong ad strategies. Looking at the sort of the bottom from left to right, independent smart ads, dynamic cascade. There's no reason in the world why you shouldn't access 6, 10, 12, 20 ad networks to get the best of fill and the best CPM for the impressions that your game serves. Dynamic cascades through mediation achieve that with technical reassurance. There is still issues in terms of blacklists and making sure that the technical implementation is smooth and comfortable. The Delta DNA dynamic cascade stack achieves that. Access to custom deals, so buying power is based on impressions. The more impressions, the better deals you get generally. So consolidating traffic with other users of our platform mean that you can access those good CPM deals, even if your game hasn't achieved those high impressions yet. Optimizing your ad strategy. We do a lot of work in our consulting team looking at games, playing games, and deciding where ad placement is best, how to target different segments of players, and also how to get the density right of ads for those players. What is the right format for them? So thinking about this player-first approach again. And then once you've started to optimize all of this, and this is generally in beta, but then continuing in live ops, is keeping a focus on that part of the economy. It's very easy to see your ad revenues tail off after the initial launch. You've got to keep working at it. You've got to keep focused on that and keep the CPMs high. So, as I said, that's just a bit of context. We actually, as I said before, have been running this ad survey across the industry for the last 3 years. We've got hundreds and hundreds of responses to this, so we think it's a very good temperature check of where the industry is at and how the attitude to ads has changed over the last few years. So what I'll do is, due to time, I'll do it fairly quickly, but we'll run through some of the more important findings here. All of this data and information is on our website, deltadna.com, if you want to look at it in more depth and more time later on. But here are some of the findings which I think back up some of the stuff that I've just said about developers and publishers being more thoughtful about ads, understanding that there's a revenue opportunity here, but taking it from a player-first approach. Perhaps that hasn't been done so much in the past. So what you can see is that, and we see that this is pretty representative data, a very small minority of publishers and developers don't show ads at all. Some games, ads are not that appropriate, maybe towards the hardcore end of the spectrum. But even if you look at sort of mid-core games, 80% are still showing ads. Casual games, it's much stronger. It's only 7% of casual games that don't show ads. And you can see the breakdown there in terms of genre. Casino, social casino, is the genre that is less inclined to show ads. Sometimes due to blacklisting issues, showing other social casinos. But certainly, there's no reason why that genre couldn't benefit from a less cautious approach to ads in general. We're talking here about the attitude to ads in terms of cautious versus aggressive. As I said before, we've seen the industry going back 2-3 years being very cautious about ads. We have seen over the 3 years of the survey a very dramatic shift where getting the balance right is an important objective. And it's not to say that ads are aggressive now, it's just less cautious and better balanced. There's no reason why you can't start sending ads in the early sessions, as long as you know who you're sending them to and why and what the value exchange is in terms of that. We have seen casual games have a stronger approach to ads, and this demonstrates itself in terms of ads in the first session, more likely to show ads to paying players, so that you're starting to blend that economy. And we've seen anecdotally that paying players do respond to rewarded video as a way of supplementing their engagement with the game. Frequency was another aspect to this, and what is the concerns and the worries about ad frequency? This kind of splits slightly when you look at mid-core games versus casual games. Mid-core games are still worried about churn and enjoyment, and that's fair enough. For mid-core, richer, deeper environments, you might think that ads need to be carefully deployed there so that it doesn't get in the way of the game. It's seen as a real valuable asset to the players, and therefore any concerns about churn are prevented. Casual games, much more, the game can be much more integral part of the game mechanics. Therefore, the worries for casual games are much more about fill and CPM, and this is where you can really start to get access to good fill and CPM through mediation tools. Next, we'll talk about revenue. And over the 3 years of the survey, the percentage of income that comes from ads has dramatically moved from the left-hand side of this chart to the right-hand side. The distribution has shoved very strongly to the right-hand side, where now we are seeing a decent proportion of games making most of their revenues from ads. That we hadn't seen until the last year or two. Where the ad income now is surpassing the in-app purchase income. But certainly in that mid-range, we're seeing that many publishers, 40%, are generating between 20 and 60% of ads, whereas before the average was below 20. So that does show that in terms of the industry, the revenue generated from ads is now growing strongly. And what ad sources are used? This is another area where there's been a dramatic movement. Quite a lot of people will use exchanges. Historically, people have used their own sort of homegrown cascades and accessed 2, 3, 4 networks. But as a developer or publisher, that's quite hard work. It does take a lot of setting up in terms of the tech, and as well as the relationships with the ad networks. And it does take constant monitoring and supervision, because in the technical implementation of these things, it does take some work. So over the course of the 3 years, we've seen a big growth in terms of mediation solutions. And the obvious benefit for this is access to multiple networks, some reassurance and comfort that the technical implementation is going to be smoother in terms of the mediator having wrinkled out all of the issues, and getting access to multiple networks and taking the data across those networks so you can be making smart decisions about your ad strategies. And it's the smart decisions, it's shining a light on the ad network performance and balancing all of that is incredibly important to get your ad revenues to where you want them to be. So that means that consequent to that shift towards mediation, publishers are accessing many more networks than they used to before. There are significant numbers of publishers that are accessing at least 2 to 5 networks, many more than that. And within mediation tools, you can 10, 12, 20 networks is no problem. So that's been another big shift over the last 3 years. People using 6+ networks is now at 17%, whereas previously it was 8% in the previous year's study. And the last couple of slides here are quite a nice summary of the sentiment towards ad strategies. The first couple of years of the survey, the big message was that ads were seen by the industry as a necessary evil. And I think the reason for that is a sense of a lack of control, concern about technical implementations, worry about it being a reason for churn. And over those years, I think we've moved on as an industry in terms of having a smarter approach to ads and mediation. The technical concerns have been wrangled. Taking a player-first approach using analytics to segment players and balance your ad strategies is incredibly important. And now twice as many publishers believe that ads are an important monetization tool rather than a necessary evil, which is a dramatic change in the mindset, and the right one, in terms of making sure that your game as a marketplace is doing as much as it possibly can to deliver a great experience, but also make money at the same time. So this is the last chart, I think. We asked for people's sentiment, and you can see that 2016 there was a big spike in terms of a cautious approach to ad strategies. And that has diminished significantly, where now people are feeling much more confident that they've got a balanced approach to ads. And that's great. That's what we want, with tools like Delta DNA, people to be able to be confident about their ad strategies within the context of the overall game balancing. We know that these are challenging things to do. It's hard to design and run these games profitably. But I think with data shining a light on the player experience and making sure that your monetization strategies are appropriate for different types of players, that really unlocks your game success. So, conclusions. We're still evolving fast. I think we're sort of halfway through a 15-year transformation here. We're still learning, but we've come a long way in the last 6, 7 years, I think, in terms of using data to figure out what it feels like from the player's point of view. Ads are a natural part of that, balancing engagement, in-app purchase, and ad strategies, and making sure that we recognize it as a revenue opportunity and not leaving it to the last minute in the beta testing and the soft launch to jam ads into the game. Let's think about it in terms of A/B testing strategies and game balancing. And through that route, the player-first approach, managing the whole game economy becomes within reach, and that really does drive your game success. So I hope that's been interesting. As I say, there's lots more content on that on the website, deltadna.com. But for now, thank you for listening.